Letting go is one of the hardest things you do as you advance in your career, but it's necessary if you want to advance.
Hi, Morgan. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
We're still waiting for Dr. Gulati, right, Addie?
Yeah, but I think we can kind of get started if you want to introduce yourself, kind of speak about what she does a little bit.
Sure. So, kind of just my own background. I trained as a physician scientist pretty much all on the East Coast. I own my own surgery center as well as a couple locations for my practice, which predominantly I would consider most interventionalists today are practically spine surgeons that are doing all kinds of new procedures. So, I'm very busy with my practice, probably 3 to 4 days a week. And then I take some time to go see veteran patients also, which is kind of the core of a lot of the joy that I get in practicing medicine is seeing those patients. So I feel like I wear a lot of hats. So during grad school, I was extremely ambitious. So I did this business plan competition, and surprisingly, I just wanted to learn how to run a business. But then we ended up winning the competition. So my first startup was in the semiconductor space. So we were very much involved in quantum dot manufacturing, short to large volumes for a lot of the current fluorophore market. And then since that time, I've moved on to sprouting a few different startups that have gone commercial. So we're actively involved in the neurostimulation space. We've done an FDA manufactured product for a wearable similar to a Dexcom patch that we use a lot of therapeutic monitoring codes. So we went commercial about a year and a half ago. We've treated about 5,000 patients now, and so it's growing very rapidly. And then I also run a contract research organization, so looking at phase one to phase three trials. So really at the bleeding edge of, I'm very fortunate that I get to live my career where I get access to all of the latest and greatest. So I'm excited. I think the pain specialty is absolutely moving at lightning speed. I mean, I just got off with a CEO last week. They've got a new thing where they're delivering opsonins, changing the genetic structure of a neuron and using light to block pain signals. So like complete wild stuff that, probably 5, 10 years ago, you wouldn't have thought gene therapy would be applied, but it's moving into the clinic. So very fortunate to be involved in some of these very early phase trials. So part of what Amit and I work with Addie very closely on the IEP pain course once a year, and just I just feel that the reality is a challenge for most physicians is if you're savvy enough to get the financial pieces and understand the dynamics of healthcare flows, it's one thing, but it is brutal. There is very little educational content for fellows to early career physicians that just give them a solid footing on how to even manage the interactions to making sure that they're not getting the short end of the stick. So, I jokingly say I see Amit like he comes off as the closet academic, but he's like the most financially savvy guy there. So he always makes a comment. He's like, "You want to buy a surgery center? Let me tell you what it is." So kind of we've been and this vision of it is really the both of us have been. I mean, to his credit, he was like, it would be amazing to have an advanced business course really that's tailored to individual people because there's a lot of business courses out there, but they don't have. I don't think they really speak to the passion of helping individuals separately and making them make the next step. I think there's a lot of content, but curating that content to individual needs is very lacking, and I think it's just such a to Addie's credit and all of the folks at IEP, they've done an amazing job putting this together. So really honored to have you be a faculty speaker. So I see Amit got on, so I can let him introduce himself and really looking forward to working with you, Morgan.
Hey Morgan, I'm Amitabh Gulati. Sorry, I had a patient that wouldn't stop talking, which is a good thing. I take care of patients first.
Yes.
But I think Chris did a wonderful job introducing. I just briefly talked about what I do, and I'm happy to figure out how we can be collaborating together. And then Chris is well, right. I'm technically an academic physician, meaning that I work at a cancer center in New York City. I just happen to train a lot of fellows over the years, and I feel like I have an interest in business, even though I've never done a medical business before, other than helping run my own practice within a hospital system. But I happen to help a lot of fellows develop their business plans over the years on their own practices in medicine. Similar to Krish, we both are probably part of large industries partners, and then we're part of different business startups. And both of us have probably created a product and probably sold a product. I know I have. So to companies, we get involved, and so we kind of take a lot of those business principles that I've learned and applying it to medical type situations. My wife is strategic marketing, so we collaborate a lot together on her projects. So I just happen to have a bit of practical experience when it comes to helping our colleagues develop business plans. And that's where I'm coming from. And then more recently, I've been giving a lot of advice on how to balance life, family life, and medicine. So I'm actually in the process of getting coaching for transformation as part of my career path as I go forward and look for ways to retire. So, so I had a lot of complementary medicine and some coaching thing I'm doing on the side. But that I do this informally, so I figured I might as well get a formal license and formal education, do what I want to do regardless. What I do regardless. That's where somewhere I'm coming from. I think and then I think Christian, Addy, and others have chimed in on our vision and really our mission on what we think this is be really helpful. And we're reaching the point of we think we have a good program with you and others. Now we're coming to the point of finding ways to get you as part of the educational program, and then marketing the program as such so we can have people really want to take the curriculum.
Yeah. Y'all are clearly both underachievers. So.
You haven't met my sister.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know my husband.
Yeah, exactly. There's always some backbone somewhere.
Yes, yes, yeah. That's great. Well, it is such a pleasure to meet you both, and I'm so thrilled that Andrew has extended the invitation to me to speak at this. Addie and I were mentioning you all had a spine event in Nashville, and was it October, November?
Mm-hmm.
And so I spoke at that one, and that was my first. So this is the second one that I'm working on, and then there will be a couple of others this year, I believe. So I am a healthcare attorney, really a corporate M&A, private equity, private investor, transactional attorney, but I exclusively in the healthcare space. So I've been working with providers and those in the provider ecosystem and directly outside of the provider ecosystem for over a decade. And I'd say, I have some healthcare providers in the family, but I'm the first in my family to ever be an attorney. So I had no idea what I was getting into when I decided to go to law school. In fact, I worked in finance and marketing, in finance first and then in marketing before I went to law school. So I really, did an about face.
You had a trifecta.
I know. I actually thought I was going to play tennis professionally for a while. So
That's
really,
okay. I wanted to be a musician. It's just how it works out.
yeah. Yeah. My husband thought he was going to be a pianist for a while, but anyway, my husband and I grew up in opposite households. His parents were tiger parents. They gave the shirt off their backs to put him through the best education that money could buy. My parents were very laissez-faire, and I was doing independent classes through high school so that I could travel for tennis. And somehow we both wound up where we are, and we're fine. He's an attorney as well. He does what I do. And so we're both, healthcare, private equity, healthcare founder and investor attorneys.
What got you interested in taking care of doctors or healthcare? How did you get interested in taking care of healthcare as your primary focus?
So a little bit organically and a little bit inorganically. I have some healthcare providers in my family. So my dad is a dentist and a veteran, and my uncle is an anesthesiologist, just recently in the last couple of years retired. My aunt she's a PA, and then is now a nutritionist. And so have a series of healthcare providers in the family. And I found my way to Nashville, Tennessee, where I finished up law school, and it's a healthcare hub. And so where I was looking at the two bigger law firms in town where I was looking, both had pretty robust healthcare practices. And then coincidentally, the team that I joined happened to be the team that was infamous for not being very easy to work with. One might say I'm a glutton for punishment. So but it's very neat. I wish that I could have taken over my dad's practice, but I cannot do what you all do. I don't deal with needles and blood very well. So I wasn't pursuing taking over his practice, but I wanted to find ways to help him. And this team that I worked with, we spend more time in the healthcare services sector than anybody else in the country. And so by the time, in 2016 or 17, we used to not count how many deals, and by a deal, it could be an acquisition, it could be a restructuring, it could be an investment. we didn't know how many we were doing, so we started counting for the first time, which is kind
Oh,
of
wow.
strange to think that nobody was keeping inventory before 2016 or 17. We were a boutique firm with a few hundred people, but that year we closed 76, just my team of 5 people.
Oh, wow.
And the next year it was 94, and the next year it was over 100. So we've got the largest healthcare practice in the country right now. My mentor, who has since retired, he actually was sort of the godfather of the private investor in the healthcare services industry. His name was Don Moody. And he created the legal infrastructure that allows a non-licensed healthcare provider to invest in a healthcare sector.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So,
is there anything that like a young, let's say, physician or healthcare nurse or CRNA or anything, any like advice you could give them because you obviously have seen healthcare from a legal perspective. Any early advice that'd be useful to them? Like one piece of advice that'd be very helpful if that maybe even Krish or myself should have known. That we probably figured out later on in life.
well, it sounds like you've certainly figured it out, but really it is, I think it's find an ecosystem and a community that is supportive of your goals, your endeavors, and that shares your values. People change, but if you find people change in your life, your circles of friends, whether you move cities, your family evolves, you change schools, whatever the case may be, your friends can change. But if you find a core group of people, and it doesn't have to be big, who really share your core values, that I think has been invaluable to me in my career, but it's also been where I've seen differentiation in providers who have gotten an early start. One provider that really sticks out to me, and I keep in touch with him to this day. I helped him sell his practice 4 years ago, and it was amazing. He was under 40 years old. He was late 30s, very young, and he had built this practice by himself. So I thought initially, and then I very quickly realized it was his wife. His wife was helping him run this business so that he could focus on what he cared about and where he was spending his highest and best use. And she said, "You do what you do best. I will take care of the rest." And that support system enabled them to build a very large practice just with a single physician provider. And he had a lot of mid-levels underneath him because he was able to delegate and not have to worry. He was able to delegate to the mid-levels, but he was also able to rely on his wife to take care of the things, somebody he could trust. He didn't have to worry about an office manager who was, you know, either making mistakes or, doing something potentially untrustworthy. He didn't have to worry about it because the person he trusts more than anybody in this world was helping him run his business. And it's not always a spouse, but I helped another family like that where the husband was the physician and the wife was running everything else. Last year, very similar situation, early 40s in their couple. The physician he found his strength, his highest and best use, and his wife was there for everything else. And then early 40s, they don't have to work if they don't want to. They work purely because they want to and it's their passion. So I'd say find who those people are. And it's not always a spouse, but it often is a spouse. And for me, I'm lucky I found my spouse. He does what I do. And, even last night after dinner, after we put our kids to bed, we were having conversations about we're dealing with some pretty tricky things at work right now, not deal related, just operational related, legal issues, audit issues, things like that have come up, HR issues. And having somebody you can talk to who's supportive of that and is not trying to get you to, talk about something that's not work related. What if you want to talk about work? Has been critical in a lot of people's success where I've seen a differentiation in somebody who's doing really well versus somebody who's doing out of this world well.
Wow, well, that's really
You know,
sage advice. That's
yeah,
something yeah.
yeah, it's so interesting. Maureen, I just get I get a fresh perspective from fellows all the time because I get to work with them. But there's so many people that don't even know these resources exist, right? Like even to know how to sell a practice, like you have to have so many pieces in place just to be able to give it to someone for you to say, okay, you've got all of the structure, and like they use the word data room, like people don't even have contracts in place. And I hear horror stories with like practice managers and this and that. How do we get the word out? Like, how do we create a sense around the importance of this type of knowledge? I mean, you hear success stories, but not everybody in the, we all kind of are in our own bubbles and shells. So, I'd just be curious to see, like, have you guys done it organically, talking to provider, like I said, referral, or how have you guys gotten the word out for the kind of sort of things that you're helping practices do?
You know, we're very fortunate to where I feel like I've been blessed and have some really good clients and I've maintained those relationships. A lot of it is word of mouth referrals. I do speak at a good number of events, and I've looked and done research to see which events are going to be where the right audience will be there, the most receptive audience to hearing that message. And so I tend to seek out intentionally a lot of women's focused event because there's not many women in my industry, especially on the more finance business side. There's just, I mean, last night I was having a conversation with our business development person. We're hosting a healthcare event in a couple of months for women, and I'm trying to think who can I bring from my office in Nashville who does what I do, and there's really not that many. And so finding targeted events that where this is one of them, right? Where you have a ton of providers who are hungry enough, curious. Curiosity is so important. Finding people who are curious enough and hungry enough to attend these types of events and seek out this type of advice is just paramount. You're right. I mean, I see them in my job. I see these horror stories come to play out, whether it's I checked a box and formed a C Corp instead of an S Corp.
Yeah.
Whether it's I thought an associate had ownership in my company, but he didn't, and I've made all these promises to him, and now I don't have a tax efficient way to get him proceeds. Or the opposite, where I thought I owned this business entirely by myself, but it turns out I made a promise in a document that I didn't realize was a legally binding offer to buy equity. Now I have to honor it. You all spend so much time learning your profession and taking a ton of pride in that, as you should, because you are experts in your fields. But there are so many other fields that are relevant to what you do when you actually enter the professional world. And it would be like an orthopedic surgeon or a pain surgeon hiring an artist to advise them on their legal contracts. You need to find other people who have sought the same degree of professionalism and expertise and skill set, the same degree of experience, and just holding themselves to the same high standards in other industries. Those are the people you want to surround yourself with. So finding somebody who has thrown themselves into finance and wealth management, somebody who has thrown themselves into entrepreneurs, thinking like entrepreneurs. How do I start up a business? What are the things I need to think about? Those are creative types. Finding the legal person as well, who has said, this is what I want to do. This is my passion project. Surround yourself with those people to advise you, because you can't do it all. You can't master everything. And letting go is one of the hardest things you do as you advance in your career, but it's necessary if you want to advance.
I think incredible advice center. I always talk about therapy and procedures and a technique, but like, yeah, that's one very small segment of it. If you can't actually run an efficient practice, it's very difficult to actually even do your work. So, really impressive.
Well, I can't wait to meet you in person.
Well, likewise. It's really so, I mean, even just being on this call, it's so inspiring hearing people who, you're selling products, you're involved in research, you're treating patients, you're working with vets. I mean, those you can't teach that, you know? But what you can do is surround yourself with other people who share those goals and share those aspirations.
Amazing.
Absolutely. Professions need it. Professions who go to graduate school and extend their education beyond just an undergraduate degree, they all need it because there's a business component to whatever you're doing, be it music, entertainment, legal industry, medical industry, and it's missing. And even our associates in our law firm, they don't learn this stuff until you're training for partner, but that's 5 years into your career. Why are we waiting that long? I mean, the subject matter expertise obviously has to be there. That goes without saying. But if you really want to do something special in your career, you've got to start paying attention to these other aspects early on.
Definitely. Well, I know you have a hard stop at 9:30, so we'll let you go, but thank you so much for your time. It was so good to see you.
Thank you,
Likewise.
Morgan. It was great.
So nice to
meeting
meet you
you.
both.
All right.
Talk to you
Bye.
Talk to you
soon.
soon.
Bye.
Bye bye.